Welcome to a new YouTube video. My name is Kate Wamoko, and today, as you can see, it's a recipe video. We are going to be making orange, cinnamon, and ginger mandazis. I have struggled with making mandazis for the longest time, and when I actually hacked it, because it's about hacking the ingredients and hacking the technique and whatnot, I just want to make as many flavors of mandazis as I can. I have a recipe of orange and fennel mandazi. I think for orange in mandazis, but I will link that below if you're interested. But for this recipe, I'm gonna be making it with my mom. It's actually my mom is gonna be kneading and whatnot. We have actually kneaded the dough already, so it's outside proofing because we've added some yeast and some baking powder. We're gonna go ahead and cut that up. But before we cut that up, I'm gonna take you back and show you how we got here. Welcome. So let's jump right into our ingredients. The first ingredient is all-purpose flour. You can definitely use Maandazi flour if you have some. And then we have eggs. We have a combination of yeast and baking powder because we do not have enough baking powder. We have salt, zest from 2 oranges, cinnamon powder, and juice from 2 oranges as well. That will form part of our wet ingredients. And then we have sugar. We'll add some vegetable oil to the dough as well as blue band, and then finally we'll use warm milk, which will be the main liquid ingredient in the mandazi. So the very first step is to mix the dry ingredients together. I usually like to mix the dry ingredients together separately and the wet ingredients together separately, and then mix them together to form a dough. So your dry ingredients in this case will be your flour, your leavening, which in this case we're using yeast and baking powder together, and then you'll also add in your sugar and your salt and your spice, which in this case is the cinnamon and the orange zest. So mix in everything together. You can use your hands or a wooden spoon, whichever you prefer. Just make sure the ingredients are well spaced out. And then the next step is to rub in the margarine or butter, whichever it is you're using. So we used about 4 tablespoons of margarine, rubbed it in together with the flour to make sure that it was mixed in together, and you couldn't see any specks of margarine in it. And then we're ready for the next step. So the next step is to add in the wet ingredients to form the dough. So you can either do this in 2 ways. Either add them one by one like we did, and that will be your eggs, your milk, and your orange juice in this case. Or you can mix everything together to form one homogeneous liquid, and add it to the flour. So we chose to do it one by one, and my mom chose to mix it in with her hands. You can do that as well, or you can just use a wooden spoon, whichever works for you is fine. So the next step is just work your dough until it ceases to be sticky. You want to make sure that every part of the dough is homogeneous. There's no flour sticking out. It's not too wet. So this is the consistency you're looking for. And once you've gotten to this consistency, the next step is just let it rest for about at least an hour. So we let the dough rest outside. There was a bit of sun just showing up and leaving every now and then. So we let it rest for about an hour, and then this is what it looked like after resting. Hiya, so the next step is to roll out the dough and cut it into desired pieces. So while you're doing this, make sure your oil is getting hot so that you're multitasking. So in order to roll out your mandazi dough, you can either use flour, which you would normally use for chapati and other dough-based dishes, or you can also use oil, which I like to use, and which is what we used here. I filmed a bit of how to do that a bit later in the video. Do stick around for it. So for me, in order to test how hot the oil is, whether it is hot enough or whether I should wait a bit more, I just throw in a bit of dough and see how it cooks. So this, as you can see, this one is cooking really slowly, so the oil is not hot enough. It needs to heat up for a bit more. Yeah, so let your oil heat up a bit more, and then once it's hot enough, add in your pieces of dough and cook them. So this is how you roll out your mass of dough in hot oil instead of in flour. You dip it in the hot oil, mind you, hot oil, and then when you put it back on the surface, you make sure that every part of the dough is covered in the oil so that it does not stick to the surface, and then you roll it out. So it will be faster and cleaner, because when you roll out the dough in flour, you tend to run a risk of the oil burning because of the excess flour. So this helps out, and it's also faster to roll out the dough in oil because your dough becomes a bit hot when you dip it in the hot oil, and then it becomes easier to roll out. And then cut up your pieces and cook them in the oil until the entire dough is cooked through. To know that your mandazis have cooked through, they will turn golden brown on one side, on the underside, and then you're gonna turn them on the other side to make sure that they cook on that side as well. It shouldn't take more than a minute for both sides to cook. And then another thing to note is that your oil will keep fluctuating in temperature, so it's up to you to just use your eyes to see whether it's cooking too slowly or too fast so that it's burning, and then you adjust accordingly. You either add the heat or reduce it so that your mandazis cook at a steady temperature, so that they're cooked on the inside and they're not burnt on the outside. And here are all the mandazis we cooked. This is how they turned out. You're finally done cooking. Like, that was a lot, 2 whole packets of unga. But this is why I'm calling this the perfect mandazi, because hear that? It's crunchy on the outside, especially when it's hot. When it cools down, sometimes it just becomes softer. But when it's crunchy on the outside, on the inside, it's super fluffy, which is amazing because you can eat a few and just be full. But for me, when they're hot, I can eat like 20. I love hot mandazi. And then it's not too sweet, it's just the perfect sweetness, and then you can taste the spice from afar, especially the orange. It's beautiful. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Do try this mandazis. I'm gonna write, of course we did so many mandazis today, but I'm gonna write a recipe for just 3 cups of flour, so that if you're going to do more, you just double or quadruple them, and then yeah. But this was 2 packets. It was a lot, but we're done. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and catch you on the next one. Bye.